So hello everybody, and a big welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's a pretty exciting thing that's going to be happening in India in the next few weeks. It's going to be the very first. Hello, Hanal. It's going to be the very first Best Sommelier of India competition. I think that says a big thing. I think about the state of the sommelier profession in India. Definitely in my role with the Court Master Sommeliers and working with the Indian School of Beverages, we can really see that it starts to be a very serious profession with some very serious people. So, Court of Master Sommeliers has been running courses there through Indian School of Beverages and Viraj and Akshay for a number of years. And yeah, every year we see it stronger and stronger. So I think now is a great time to do something like the Best Sommelier of India competition. And really, there's been a lot of interest from around the world, people wanting to sponsor, people thinking it's a great idea. So it's going to be kind of an international kind of audience watching. So it's a big thing. So I hope you're all excited. I hope you're all getting ready for it. I think we're going to talk about now. I'm going to talk a little bit about, the role of a sommelier. Um, Most of you will know a lot of this stuff anyway, but it's good for those that maybe are new in the business or getting used to the business. It's a good reminder of, what the entire role is. And then also we're going to talk about some competition tips. So as long as I can get my IT working properly. Okay, so really the role of a sommelier and preparing for a competition. So what is a sommelier and what does a sommelier have to do? Sommelier is a pretty unique position in the world of hospitality. Not only do they have to be, first of all, I think an excellent waiter. Someone's got to have a lot of hospitality experience. They've got to be used to be working in a restaurant, moving around a restaurant. They've got to be comfortable with standing at a table and talking to guests. So they really need to be very, very good waiters to start with. And that's where a lot of people who move into sommeliery start off, working in hospitality as a waiter. But then they need to develop themselves a deep knowledge about their product. So even if it's bar or even if they're looking after a coffee station as well, some sommeliers look after things like cheese trolleys. Some of them look after cigar selections. So there's a lot of different skills. There's a lot of different knowledge areas where they can develop themselves. And the difficult thing is when you're working in hospitality and you have to develop your knowledge, it generally tends to be something you have to do on your time off. And we all know you don't get a lot of time off in hospitality. But yeah, so it's building that deep knowledge. It's building your diplomacy skills. You are dealing with the customers, you are dealing with managers, you are dealing with chefs, and you are dealing with customers and talking about price. So when you're talking about price, there's a certain amount of diplomacy that has to be done there. You don't want to embarrass people when you're talking about budgets, how much money they would like to spend. So diplomacy is a very important skill as well. Guest service is, great customer service, even if a customer is slightly annoying or if they're very demanding, good customer service is really important. Really, sommeliers need to be great managers. It's a pretty unique role because you're working within a team of people. You're working with a team of front of house waiters, receptionists, managers. You're working to a certain extent with the chefs. You're liaising with the chefs a lot, but you're pretty much on your own because you have your own area of budget, you have your own finances to look after, you have your own stock to look after, you have your own glassware, your own service. So you are kind of working in a team, but you're also working alone. You have to be super flexible. If there's plates to be cleared and things like that, maybe you've got to jump in and help out there. Really, you've got to have a good knowledge and a good love of food. You've really got to understand food and flavors and taste and balance, really the same way as a chef does. If you go and talk to a chef and you talk all about, flavor and balance and that sort of thing, then you're 100% on their wavelength. And you have to be super organized. So all of that sort of stuff has to come into play. So really, if we're looking at a modern sommelier's role, We would kind of think that principally it's to provide service of beverages. That's the main thing that you do. That's really the main thing that you're doing. But there's so much more that you have to do as well. If you're kind of front of house, it's the service of beverages, it's guest relations, it's staff management, it's liaising with the chef, it's maybe organizing things like wine dinners. But then there's a huge amount of back of house things as soon as the guest's not there. So developing the wine list, depending where you are, you may be developing all of the beverage choices. So like I said, you may be looking after things like tea, coffee, water, spirits, cocktails. So anything kind of considered wet sales. Wet sales are really where the majority of the biggest profits can come from. So this is why sommeliers are pretty important, because you might be in a team of 50 people, but there might be one or two of you, but you're generally controlling the biggest amount of profit. So I think this is why now sommeliers all over the world are starting to be quite valued, because people who have restaurants and hotels, they understand that having someone there that looks after the wet sales and manages it properly really does affect their bottom line, does make the money. So you'll be developing the beverage choices, you'll be looking after all the purchasing. Purchasing is important because you'll probably work to a budget. You probably don't want to overspend. You definitely don't want to underspend. But you don't want to overspend, and you want to make sure you're getting the best deals and you're getting the best service from your wine merchants. Managing the stock is pretty important. Probably the most valuable stock, the most valuable thing that you'll have in a restaurant or a hotel will be the beverages. Very expensive spirits, expensive wines. So that's very important to manage that stock properly, to make sure it's accurately stock taked, to make sure that there's no theft, to make sure that anything which is faulty gets returned to suppliers and gets credit on it. So stock management is very important. That kind of comes with waste control as well. I think what's very important is staff training. I think that, as you are working mainly alone in a restaurant, if you can get the staff to help you as much as possible, and that can be anything from training them how to polish glasses well, how to clean glasses from a table, how to pour beverages. You probably don't want them pouring too much of the wine because you want to control that, but pouring water, clearing glasses, anything like that. Definitely things like aperitifs, selling an aperitif, glass of champagne, glass of wine when they sit down. I think staff really need to know your wines by the glass list as much as possible. And then what's really important, I think, is dessert wines. So if you're selling any dessert wine by the glass, I think a lot of staff training, because if you've got a maitre d' or a head waiter who's standing at a table selling some desserts, it's very easy for them to be able to sell glasses of dessert wine as well. And all of this is going to add, it's going to give you more time to spend with guests. It's going to take off the pressure from you, and it's going to make your department more profitable. I think being part of the management team is also very important as well. You'll be included in the management team, probably quite high up. You'll be kind of probably underneath the maitre d' or the restaurant manager, and the assistant restaurant manager. You'll probably be within that top level of management. You may be managing your own things, like your own rotas, if you have a team of sommeliers working for you. So there's definitely a lot of management involved, and big quality control as well, to make sure that the service is good, it's coming out at the right time, making sure that the beverage selection is good, making sure that the glassware is clean, making sure that the wine's served at the right temperature, all of that sort of stuff. So quality control, just making sure everything works. So it's a big role. It's a very complex role, and it takes a lot of different disciplines, I think, to work as a sommelier, which makes it a very interesting role. By far, for me, the most interesting role that you can have. So really, if you're working front of house, the front of house kind of areas that that are important to you would be working as a team. Like I say, working as a team, but essentially a lot of the stuff you will do on your own, but you need the team to work with you. You need them to respect what you do. You don't want to be getting stressed in service and shouting at all the waiters, because then after that, they won't help you. You need to be good team worker, good motivator. You're going to be in the dining area. You're going to be facing the customer. The customer doesn't want to see stress, doesn't want to see, you getting frustrated. And you need to deliver a speedy but not a rushed service, and the delivery of the appropriate beverages at the right time, just before the food is coming out. So all of this really covered, the sort of the service side of things. So that's sort of front of house. Back of house, big area back of house. You will spend time. I think when I was working in restaurants, I was working in a 3 Michelin star restaurant for Gordon Ramsay. We did about 16-hour days. I think the time in front of a customer was probably about 9 hours. So about 7 hours would all be back of house stuff. Again, team working. You may have a dedicated cellar staff. You may have a dedicated glass washing team. There's the preparation areas. You may have certain areas which are, your areas where you can prepare, decant things in advance, to do all that sort of stuff. You'll definitely have a cellar or a wine storage area. Depending on your role and the size of the restaurant, you may be looking after things like the coffee station, at least making sure that that's done well, and then having some junior waiters actually do the service. Glass storage area, glass washing area. Glassware is a very expensive commodity, and usually if you send your team off at the end of the night or ask some junior waiters to go to the back to polish glasses, they're going to be tired. They're not going to be focused, and you can get a lot of breakages. So really great, training on glass washing, things like that. Always wash the glasses warm. Never use a damp cloth. Make sure you have a big stack of dry cloths that people can change as soon as it gets damp, and then put over a radiator, something like that. All these things are going to cost you, pennies per day. One extra less smashed glass in a day. At the end of a month, it's going to make a big difference. And at the end of the year, it's going to make a big difference. If you've got poor glass washing, at the end of a year, you can have a big glass bill. And that means that maybe your restaurant manager or the owner is going to say, okay, you have a smaller glass budget this year, so you end up using inferior glasses. So glasses are your responsibility and a big expensive commodity. If you're lucky, you may have something like a sommelier's office where you can work on a computer, where you can do your beverage lists and things like that. And then managing things like service stations, so making sure everything is stocked up and ready to go. So that's kind of role of a sommelier. So it's a big role. It takes a lot of disciplines, working with the chef, working front of house, working back of house, being very organized, being calm. It's a big responsibility and a big role. So like I say, we're pretty excited to be running the Best Sommelier of India for 2024. We'll be doing it along with the Core Master Sommeliers. I will be out in March along with Gareth Devaney, Dimitri Menar, who's our chairman, and also Brian Julian, who is the book. If you've done any of our courses, the Professional Sales and Service is the book written by Brian Julian. So he'll be coming out. He founded the Court of Master Sommeliers, and he was the CEO for around about 40 years, I think it was. So he'll be coming, first time he's coming to India. So we're pretty excited about having him there for the competition. And we're also running an introductory and a certified course just before the competition. So the first round of the competition will start on February the 15th. It'll be an online exam. And really, I think there's around about 100 or so people that are interested in entering, which is fantastic. And out of those 100 or so, it'll get down to the final 12. So the final 12 will be the semi-finalists. And those final 12 will come on March the 6th to Mumbai, and they will compete in the morning. So 12 competitors in the morning. And out of those 12, the final 3, the last 3, will go through to the afternoon, and they will perform on stage, and it will be broadcast on social media. So it will have a big audience, I think. Hopefully a lot of people in the crowd and a lot of people watching from outside. So like most sommelier competitions or exams, both the semi-final and the final will be tested on 3 disciplines. The first round questionnaire is obviously is just going to be quite theoretical knowledge, but if you get to the semi-final and the final, we're going to be testing you on 3 different things. Your theoretical knowledge, about wine, beverages, spirits, cocktails, aperitifs, digestifs, all of that sort of thing. Then blind tasting ability. So we'll be having a few wines in there, maybe a few spirits to taste. And then practical service skills. So those three kind of things that with the Court of Master Sommeliers, that's what we examine on: theory, blind tasting, and practical service. So if you make it into the final 12 and you get invited to Mumbai, first thing on the morning of the 6th of March, you will have a written theory paper, multiple choice paper. Then you will have a written tasting exam. You will have 2 wines, a red and a white, to taste blind and to identify. Then a practical, it'll be opening and serving sparkling and white wine, and then food and wine recommendations. So kind of standing at the table in a restaurant scenario, talking about food and wine recommendations, and then the practical opening and serving of sparkling wine. If you get through to the final on stage, there will be various practical scenarios. Again, including opening and serving sparkling wine, really as you would do in your restaurant. So pretending that, the judges on stage are your customers. Another practical scenario, which is going to be opening and decanting and serving a red wine. Again, the stage will be set up with various tables, and you will be directed to each table and told what the task is. Then there'll be an oral identification of mixed products. It could be some spirits, it could be things like fortified wines, and also wine. So a mixture of different products. There'll probably be a task involving spirits at some point, either a tasting, either cocktail making, something like that. So then food and wine recommendations, again on stage, and errors on a wine list. So we will give you a full wine list. We'll put that up on a screen, and you will have to identify certain errors on a wine list. And then a picture round, which will be identifying people or places. So each candidate, each of the 3 finalists, will probably go onto stage and spend around 45 minutes, maybe to an hour, doing all of this on stage. So pretty scary to get there and pretty scary to get up in front of an audience and in front of the judges, in front of all your peers and your colleagues, and to have to perform on stage. So, a lot of the time stage fright is a big thing. Usually people, when they do these competitions, they have to do it a couple of times really to get used to that feeling of standing on the stage and doing it. But we have some big prizes. One of the prizes will be a 5-day trip to Vienna. Wines of Austria are one of the sponsors for the competition. One of the prizes will be a 5-day trip to Vienna to attend Vivinum, which is the big Austrian wine fair. So that's a pretty important event for them. And you will get people from all over Europe and obviously all the best producers in Austria. And Vienna is a pretty amazing city to spend any time in. Also, one of the prizes will include a 3-day trip to visit Champagne from the CIVC, which again is pretty good. All 3 finalists will receive a Chateau Laguiole corkscrew. And also from the Fine Foundation, they're going to be giving a special prize for the best female sommelier out of all 12 finalists. And also we have some scholarships and some to give away, which is being donated by the Gérard Basset Foundation. So there's a lot of interest in this competition, and there's a lot of people that really kind of can see the future of sommeliery in India and are willing to put up these prizes. So this is the UK. This is the UK Sommelier of the Year a few years ago. These are the 3 finalists, sponsored by Taittinger Champagne. So these are the 3 finalists. And the other picture is some of them actually performing on stage. So if I can give you some advice on competing in sommelier competitions, appearance, body language is very important. You need to look smart. If we're kind of judging you on, would we like to be served by you in a restaurant? Make sure you turn up looking smart. Make sure your hair is all tied back. You don't have big earrings for the boys. For the girls, not big earrings. Make sure that you're dressed smart and you look like you're a professional hospitality worker. It's very important when each of the tasks are being explained to you. Listen very carefully to each task. What will happen is you will be moved around to the different tables. Probably myself will be the MC, and I will say to you, okay, you're going to have 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever to do this task. And what we would like you to do is, and then I'll explain the task to you. If sometimes, and I've done these competitions where you're standing on stage and you're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights. You're looking out at the audience, you're looking at the judges, and the MC is talking to you and you're not listening at all. So really, if you don't understand, ask it to be repeated if you fully don't understand what is being asked of you. And each task is being timed, so be quick and efficient, but not rushed. I have seen these competitions where somebody takes too long on the decanting and they don't finish it, they don't pour the wine, and ultimately they'll lose. Generally, these competitions, the final three are very, very close. So one little slip up can be the difference between the first place and the third place. But remember to smile, relax, and to enjoy the experience. It's easier to say than it is to do. But if we can see that you're enjoying it, and we can see your natural kind of hospitality smile and hospitality friendliness, that's gonna get you more points. So why am I talking about this? Well, basically, I won Sommelier of the UK after arriving second place twice. So the first time I did it, I came second. The second time I did it, I came second. I competed twice in the Best Sommelier of Europe, representing the UK, and never won that, but I did come fourth. And for 6 years, I wrote the UK Sommelier competition, the UK Sommelier of the Year competition, along with Gérard Basset. So I know pretty much a lot about it from either side. I remember the first time I did my competition, I came second. It was a big surprise to me to come second. I really didn't think I would get that far. And then the second year, and I had no pressure. There was no pressure on me. Nobody knew who I was, and I managed to get second place. And then the second year that I went back, everyone was telling me, you're going to win this year. And that year, there was a lot of pressure on me, and it was a very different mindset. So the second year, I don't think I did very well because I was under a lot of pressure. I was being clapped on the back and told, you're going to win this year. And so the pressure was a bit too much. But then I went back the third year and got it that time. But just to give you a little bit of some understanding of the scenarios. So really, it's important that when you're on the stage, you really understand what the judges are looking for and what they're trying to test you on. And all of that is going to be in the description of the task. So listen specifically to what they tell you and figure out what is important and what is not important. So listen for things like dates, anniversaries, budgets, special occasions, if it's summer, if it's winter, if it's indoor, size of the party, the nationality of the guests. So, for example, if someone came and they said, okay, we're celebrating a 20-year anniversary, and there's 4 of us, and we'd like some recommendations to go with this menu. You would really be thinking 20-year anniversary. Okay, so they're probably going to be wanting to have things around that year. So 20 years, that would be 2004. So I'm going to recommend some wines from 2004. Maybe a Madeira that's 20 years old, maybe a whiskey which is 20 years old, something like that. If they give you a specific date, like we got married in 1961 and we want to have a great night, you'd be thinking about some top-end Bordeaux's from that vintage. So if a date or an anniversary or a time is mentioned in the scenario, you should really be thinking about that. Okay, what can I do around that particular date or that anniversary to make it a special occasion? Budgets can be important. If people say, okay, we're all here, we've just sold our business, we're on a massive budget, we really want to go to town and we want to have an amazing occasion, then you're talking Bordeaux First Growth, Sassicaia, Krug, Dom Perignon. You can really go to town. If it's a special occasion, bear in mind if it's people's wedding anniversaries, birthdays, things like that, that's all important stuff. If we're telling you that as a judge, then you've got to take note of that. If it's in the summer or the winter, summer occasion might entail slightly lighter wines. Winter might be slightly heavier wines. If it's indoors or if it's outdoors, again, that could have something to do with your choice of wine. The size of the party, if it's a table for two or if it's a banquet for 30 or 50 people. And then the nationalities of the guests. So if we tell you, okay, we've got a table of 6 people, 3 are from Australia, 3 are from California, we'd like to recommend some dishes. We'd like you to recommend some wines to go with their dishes. It's a nice thing to be able to say, okay, well, I'm going to recommend some Australian wines and I'm going to recommend some California wines. Or at least say, would you like to have California wines or would you like to have New Zealand, Australian wines or whatever? So any kind of thing that we say in that description of the task is going to be important. And if we're mentioning it, it means that it's probably going to be on the marking sheet. So if you are hearing us talk about dates and anniversaries and nationalities, do bear that in mind. You may have selling scenario. So we may ask you to describe something like a wine or a product, and we may say, okay, we want you to sell it to us. So we want you to do a staff training session on this glass of Madeira. What are you going to say to the staff? So first of all, you're not going to go into lots and lots of tasting notes. If you were thinking you're telling a young waiter about this Madeira, and if you start giving them lots and lots of tasting descriptors, they're going to get bored pretty quickly. So you want to tell them things that's important to them. First of all, briefly what it tastes like. It's a Portuguese fortified wines. It's quite high in alcohol. This is how it tastes. This is what I would recommend it goes with on the menu. If you're selling it, try and sell it with the cheese or maybe sell it with the dessert. This is how much it costs. This is the glass that you're going to serve it in. And this is where you're going to find the bottle to be able to pour the glass. So they need to kind of know that sort of stuff, the practical stuff of things. What's the size of the glass, how much it costs, and where it is, and what do they sell it with, rather than telling them all the different sort of tasting notes. We may ask you things like, you have a case of Madeira. How are you going to sell it? How are you going to sell it in your restaurant? So talk about doing things like a specific dish on the menu. Talk about doing special offers where you will have a Madeira promotion, a promotional deal, maybe a Madeira wine dinner, something like that. So anything like that when we talk about, selling the commercial scenario, sometimes I see people and they do that and all they do is go into a description of the wine. We want you to think about, you need to tell us how to sell it. You're going to tell your boss. If you go to him and say, I want to do a promotion on Dom Perignon, and your boss says, okay, well, why am I going to give you all this champagne? How are you going to sell it? So you've got to say, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. These are all the different ways that I'm going to sell it and make it a big success. And really with the restaurant scenario, it's good to try and create a story, kind of with a beginning, with a middle, and with an end to it. So when the beginning part of the scenario might be, you're welcome, you're recommending aperitifs, your canapes, your waters, that sort of thing. So it's kind of welcoming the guests. If we sit down and we say, okay, we've got 3 guests here, one's, it's a 50-year anniversary, what wine do you recommend with this menu? Then don't say, well, with the first course, I recommend this. It's supposed to be reenacting a restaurant scenario. So show us your hospitality skills. The first thing that you may be saying is, well, welcome to the restaurant. It's great to have you. Maybe I could recommend an aperitif. At the moment, we have a really great vintage from Sula. We have a Sula Rosé that we're doing by the glass. Maybe I could recommend that you have that as an aperitif, and we can send some canapes out as well. And also, we have this particular bottled water. Maybe you can try that. So a nice welcoming, and show your skills, show your adaptability, talking about aperitifs, talking about canapes, talking about water, that sort of thing. But remember, you're timed, so don't spend a long time on it. And then you get to the sort of the bulk of the scenario, the middle bit. So that's probably going to be more food and wine matching. So if we say to you, okay, we're having a platter of fresh smoked salmon, what do you recommend with it? Don't tell us, "Oh, I'd recommend Chablis." Okay, tell us, "I recommend 2022 Chablis Premier Cru Le Forchum from Louis Michel because it has a lovely high acidity, it's fresh, it's bright, and with the oiliness in the smoked salmon, it's going to match really, really well with it." And kind of remember that menu is probably, it's a fictitious menu, so you can add to it anything you want. So you can say, well, with that smoked salmon, our chef marinates it in a lot of dill and then he serves with it a honey mustard sauce. So because of that, I'd be going for a slightly older wine. Maybe if we say, okay, we're going to have a roast fillet of beef, what do you recommend with it? Well, you can say the chef does the beef with wild mushrooms and he does it with a Madeira sauce or he does it with a port sauce. And because of that, this is the wine I recommend. So to a certain extent, if the dish is quite basic, if it says roast chicken, you can add to it and you can say, well, I would go for this wine because the chef cooks the chicken in this way or cooks the fish in this way and does it with this garnish. Again, really what that shows the judges is that you're pretty quick on your feet. You know, you can think pretty fast and that you have a good knowledge of food. You have a good knowledge of pairing food and wine together. Again, we probably want to see originality, you know, so we want to see some original food and wine matching. Um, so you can come up with any kind of food and wine match as long as you can really justify why it works. Then you're going to have a decanting sparkling wine service. You know, make sure things like glassware is clean and equipment is clean. If you go and you're the third person on stage and you go to the decanter and it's got red wine in it, we'll probably say to you, don't worry, use that. But I have seen sommelier competitions where they will have glasses on the side and they will have lipstick on. So you'll go and clear glasses and you'll take your glasses and one will have a lot of lipstick on or one will have some wine in the bottom of it and people will take those and put them on the table. And of course, you know, you would never do that in your own restaurant. So you'd not be expected to do that on stage. You know, portion control when you're pouring, you know, if you're pouring sparkling wine and it's a table of 8, when you go around the table, under pour. So pour a little bit in each glass. I have seen people do that and they get all the way around and they get to the last person and they've got no more champagne left in the bottle or they've got no more red wine left in the decanter. So kind of think about portion controls. You know, under pour if you have to. Don't make it look like a tiny bit in the glass, but just pour a little bit less than you normally would because it's better to be slightly under poured than have an empty glass at the end. You know, when you get up on stage, we will probably say to you something like, you know, this is kind of your restaurant and you have a table of 2 here and you have a table of 4 here. You know, we want you to treat it like your restaurant. So what we may do is your table of 4 may be sat and your table of 2 is not sat. And then as you're halfway through your food and wine recommendation, the table of 2 turns up and they're standing there. So you'll need to kind of excuse yourself from one table and go to the others, sit and welcome the other table of 2, something like that. So pay attention to what's going on the stage. It's really important, you know, mix up formats depending on the size of the party. You know, you can recommend if it's a table of 2 or a table of 3, it's important to recommend things like wines by the glass, you know, half bottles. If it's a big table, you know, it's a good opportunity to have magnums or larger. And enthusiastically promote a big format if it's a large party. So I remember seeing a friend of mine, Xavier Rousset, who's a master sommelier, when he won the UK Sommelier of the Year. I remember him. It was a successful business deal, big budget, table of 12, and he was enthusiastically talking about all these great wines. And then for the main course, he was like, and I tell you what we have, guys, you know, I've got a Methuselah of Sassicaia 1988 in the cellar. We've been waiting for the right occasion to sell it on, and now it seems like this is the right occasion. And that was great, you know, because it's a big table, so use big bottles, you know, and really if you're being told do an amazing wine budget, go for some of those top end wines, your Cheval Blanc 1947, your Dom Perignon 51, or Aubryon 61, whatever, and try and be original. Come up with something and talk to the guests, as you would do in a restaurant. Ask them, would you like to go for a classic white Burgundy, or would you like to go for a Chardonnay from somewhere else in the world? And if you would, well, I've got a great Chardonnay from Japan, or whatever. Watch out for guests, which can be slightly awkward, slightly tricky. So you may get some customers who are going to complain about something. So people making complaints is always a difficult one on stage. It kind of throws you off your game a little bit. And if you kind of get stuck, come up with cocktails. So if you've been asked to pick some different wines or some different things, and you start getting lost, especially if it gets to desserts, you might be getting to the desserts and you really can't think of a particular wine. Say, well, I'll tell you what, our cocktail barman does this amazing cocktail that goes really, really well with this dessert, because the dessert has passion fruit in it, and he makes this cocktail, and it's a blend of passion fruit liqueur mixed with some cognac or something like that. So it's often a good thing to think, throw in a cocktail at the end if you're running out of ideas. And then really at the end of the scenario, kind of when you get to the end of it, finish with digestives, maybe coffees, maybe teas, and thank the judges and guests. So, you can say things like, okay, so that's what I would recommend with your menu. Are you all happy with that? And if they say, yes, I'm very happy with that. And then you say, and then after that, maybe you could have a digestive. We have a local gin, or we have a local whiskey that would be really good. And then we have a tea from a specific area close to where we're holding the competition. Maybe you'd like to finish on that. You probably won't get a huge amount of points for that. But again, what it really shows us is your flexibility, your hospitality skills. So kind of make it like a book, a beginning, a middle bit, and an end. The middle bit's going to be the most important bit, but start with something, a good recommendation, a good welcome, and then finish with something quite interesting and something quite unique. You may have a spirit tasting. The spirits may be served in black glasses, maybe a mix of spirits or liqueurs. So when you get something in black glasses, that's pretty difficult. You can often even get white wine and red wine. And if it's in a black glass, sometimes it can be difficult to know if it's a white wine or a red wine. And so with spirits, that's going to be tricky. You may get something like, I remember one of the competitions I did, I had a range of clear glasses with white spirits in. So 6 glasses in front of me, everything looked white. And I think one of them was a vodka, one was a gin, one was an eau de vie, I think one was a tequila, so something like that. I have seen it before where it's all brown spirits. So you might have 4 brown spirits in front of you, and one's a rum, one's a whiskey, one's a cognac, one's an armagnac. So you may have something like that. Then a wine tasting. So you may be asked to do quite a technical wine tasting, as if you're talking to a winemaker. So if you are, you can use technical terms like pyrazines, like Rotundun, that sort of thing. You may be asked to do, like I said, a staff tasting, and that's better to keep it simple, give sales information about it. You may be asked to do a tasting like an MS, a CMS, or a WSET style tasting. And you may be asked to do a customer tasting, just simple and sound appealing. With a customer, you wouldn't talk about pyrazines. You wouldn't say medium plus acidity. With a customer tasting, they want to know that it's a nice, fresh, high acid and light wine, lots of fruit to it, and it's going to go really, really well with fish and seafood, shellfish, something like that. And really, it's good with a wine tasting as well. Don't spend too much time on it. I will tell you now that if those are used to doing CMS tastings, you'll have 4 minutes to do each wine. You won't have 4 minutes for each wine on this. So don't go into the full CMS, kind of the whole 4 minutes. And it's also very good at the end of the tasting to say things like what glass you would serve it in, whether you would decant that wine, what service temperature you would serve it at, and maybe even if you do have time, what kind of dish you would serve it with. So maybe you got a good Bordeaux, you would say, I'd serve it in a big Bordelais glass, I'd decant it an hour in advance, I'd be serving it around about 14, 15 degrees at the very most. And the kind of food that I would serve it with would be lamb or beef or something like that, some rich meat dish. So that's kind of the wine tasting. You will have a scenario on that. Wine list errors. So you will have a list, probably sparkling wines, white wines, and then red wines and dessert wines or fortified wines. So it's not usually an issue of pricing or accents. So if you do kind of look at the wine list and you think the font isn't very good, that's not the error. You know, if you think maybe it could do with a bit more spacing between the lines, that's not an error. So it's not really anything visual. It's to do with things like, and it's not to do with pricing as well. So if you see it's a Dom Perignon and it's on there for 1,000 rupees, don't say, well, that's a mistake because it's too cheap. So it's not really to do with pricing or accents, things like that. One of the classic ones that you would get is you would have a section which is labeled champagne and you'd have some sparkling wines in there. So the heading would be champagne and it would have a Prosecco or an English sparkling wine or something like that. Or you would have white wines put into the red wine section or red wines put into the white wine section. Wine put into the wrong regions or countries. Special cuvées that are from the wrong winery. So, you know, you might say something like you have a Chateau Trotanoir from Saint-Emilion, and Trotanoir is from Pomerol. You might say something like you have let me think, a Bel Canto Riesling from Australia, and Bel Canto Riesling comes from New Zealand. So something like that. So a special cuvée, and it's in the wrong winery. The vintages may be wrong. Things like another classic is things like you would have Cloudy Bay Sauvignon Blanc 1980. Cloudy Bay didn't start till 1985. And things like wines and champagnes and ports from vintages that were not declared. So these would be your usual errors. I think most of the time it will be the wrong wine put in the wrong country. So I might have something like Ken Forrester Chenin Blanc from Canada or something like that. Then you would have a photo round. Photo round would be kind of pretty fast and furious. You would have around about 5 seconds to identify something which is what am I, where am I, or who am I. So it might have what am I, and you have a photograph of a very famous chateau. Or it might be where am I, and you might have a photograph of a very famous river or a mountain range or something like that. Or who am I? It might have a photograph of somebody, Jancis Robinson, someone like that, and it says, who am I? And you've literally got 5 seconds to state who it is. So that picture will come up on the screen, it will stay there for 5 seconds, and you have to answer the question, what am I, who am I, where am I? So that's always quite fun. Can be difficult. And then you'll probably get to something like a champagne pour. So this may be the very final task with everyone, all the 3 competitors doing this on the stage at once. So obviously, if you're opening champagne in front of people and you're doing it in front of the judges, open it safely. Put your hand over the cage and the cork, you know, make sure that it's done safely. Make sure that all the glasses are poured evenly, that none of the glasses are, you start with the first glass right to the top and you finish with the last glass with just a drop in. Really none of that crouching and bending down and looking at the glasses, you know, stand up straight and tall and pour nice and elegantly. And if you pour into one glass, you can only pour once. You can't go pour all the glasses and then go back to the beginning and top them all up. And then hopefully you will end up with glasses all full, all the same level, and the bottle would be empty. So for those that are in the semi-final, I will be doing a decanting and a sparkling masterclass, opening sparkling wine at the table and decanting. We'll be doing that just before the competition in Mumbai. So the date will be confirmed. That will be confirmed by Viraj and Akshay with the Indian School of Beverages. They will let you know when that is for the final 12 finalists. But best of luck to everyone. I think that these things are really just by the fact that you enter these competitions says quite a lot about you. I think that it is a very scary thing to go into a competition. I remember doing the European competition when I came fourth, and everyone said to me, "You'll get onto the final stage." And the finalists were French guy, um, um, Paolo Basso, who ended up winning, and then they were going to call the third name, and everyone had said, "Oh, it's going to be you. You're going to get onto the final." And I was very excited to get onto the final. And then suddenly I thought, oh my God, I've got to get on stage and I've got to talk in French. This is terrifying. So I was terrified at that point. And then they said the third finalist is Andreas Larsen. So he got onto the stage and he won it at that point. But my point is, I think that it's very brave to enter these competitions. I think that there's a lot of talent in India. I think that it's going to be a big event, and I see it carrying on for many, many years. So I was involved in the first competition in China, and I think we're up to about 12 years in China now, 12th best sommelier of China competition. And it's really grown and grown and grown, and it's become, a very important kind of event on the sommelier's calendar in China. And we really hope that it's going to go the same way in India, and we see no reason why it shouldn't. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. If anyone has any questions, then please put them in the chat box. I think that Akshay, who's just appeared, he can send out a copy of that PDF to anyone who requests it. Please just drop him an email and he will send that to you. But apart from that, please put questions in the chat box. And otherwise, thank you very much for your attention and best of luck.
First question, they want to know about what kind of questions we are going to do in the first round.
Well, first round is going to be multiple choice. Multiple choice. And it's going to be online. I guess that Akshay is the best one to answer how it actually works, but it's going to be general wine knowledge questions.
Yeah. By 11th, you will have all the details from us about the time and what exactly the would be looking like. So you will have the details available. Mostly it will be MCQ questions and little bit short answers, just like what we generally have. Nothing in longer format. Probably just a one-liner.
Wish you all the very best and I hope this was informative to you. Write to us, ping us, message us, connect to us however you need. I'm sure everybody is going to be great. This is a good set of crowd. Everybody is well experienced, has seen and done CMS, done WSET, has been working in the industry for a long time. So I don't think so you should face any challenges, but wish you all the very best and do reach out if at all, anything last minute, anything you want to know. Yeah.
And thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ronan. Thanks a lot for your time.
All right. Yeah, pleasure. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you all in Mumbai in a few weeks.